Come join us as we dive deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today, interviewing top leaders from around the world and sharing true cybercrime stories to raise awareness. But first, a huge thank you to all of our executive co-producers who subscribed to our Prime membership and fueled our growth. So please help us keep this going by subscribing for free to our YouTube channel and downloading our episodes on Apple or Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Hey, well, welcome everybody to another episode of Cybercrime Junkies. I'm your host, David Morrow. In the studio today is my illustrious, always positive co-host, Mark Mosher. Mark, how are you, man?
I'm doing wonderful, David. Man, I'm excited about this episode. This is going to be a good one. Tell us who we got in the studio with us today, David.
We have Eric Taylor. Eric, welcome, sir. Eric is he's a kind of a Renaissance person in the sense that he's kind of a spiritual technology leader, heads up a team of security experts at his company, Barricade Cyber, and they are at the heart of ransomware. Like when things go bad, Eric and his team are who you call, right? It's not the Ghostbusters. You call Eric's team, and they negotiate directly with cybercrime gangs, helping save organizations, trying their best to keep organizations out of the news, which is always really key. And think of it almost like a ransomware SWAT team. So a remarkable leader, well known in the cybersecurity community, really one of the global leaders. So Eric, welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, David. I greatly appreciate the introduction. Couldn't have said it even better myself. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll tell you, if you ever...
We can follow you around and introduce you like that every time you walk in a room, too.
I was just going to say, we are happy to just like start off every Zoom meeting you have at work with that intro.
There we go.
So, okay, so let's start from the beginning. Kind of like, how did the whole thing start? Like, how did you get into cybersecurity? Like, were you a kid really curious about technology? Walk us through so that the people watching can kind of get a sense of you.
Sure. So started off when, I was a kid messing, with Atari 800 LX was my very first PC. As soon as, I had the big programming book, the big thick books, for basic, and you spent like 4 hours and you made a turtle draw a star, and I was freaking hooked, right? So
that's hilarious.
I was just all in it. So not to upset my parents too much, but stepfather was in some department with the Air Force, we'll just say, and
okay.
My mom was in technology, so I got a little bit of both sides of that fence, a little bit of things I'm not supposed to know as a young kid, plus with technology. So, we were, at least for technology, we were the Joneses on the block. So, we had the first DOS computer, or one of the first people to have DOS, and Windows 3.0, 3.1.
Oh yeah. So this is back before cybersecurity was in the news, right?
Yep.
This was, at the early inception stages.
Yep. So I was always tinkering, was, if I do this, what happens to the computer? And it was always that, my stepdad knew I was on the computer because the darn thing was acting funky again, right? So, from there, getting into bulletin board systems, and, no matter what anybody says, bulletin board systems created email, not a famous political person. So I was really hooked in it from very early on, and, really wanting to be a tinker. And, it really got to a point by the time I was in high school where I took it too far, and I was actually a full-fledged hacker into NASA and some other agencies that caused the FBI to actually SWAT the house when I was a kid. And
so hang on.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
So I was about to say, how long do we have for this story? Let's go.
Hang on.
Well, I'm ready for episode 2. I got so many questions.
So you're telling me like when you were what, 14, 15 years old?
15, yes, sir.
15 years old, and they swatted your house like the FBI, like the dudes with
Literally, yeah.
jackets that say FBI, and
Yes, sir.
they come knocking on the door.
Yep.
Wow.
My only saving grace at the time was I did this at school.
Okay.
So the school systems, even back then, are supposed to have certain security measures in place. I was able to circumvent them and be able to do what I did. And because the security, cybersecurity back then, and computer crimes were
Was
really, advanced as a definition back
yeah.
then. So they really didn't know what to do with me, but I was able to be, let off with very stringent warnings. Uh,
Hmm.
the rest of my high school, I could not attend a class that had a computer connected to the network.
Yeah, you were banned. I bet they like what was
I
typical
couldn't
back
go
then
to
is they would ban you from any computer, any internet use or any computer use, really.
any computer
Wow.
nest. So like you remember back in the old days, that we would have those library days, right, where you can
Yeah.
go and look at the Encyclopedia Britannica, and you can look up on the old fish scale. What was those old films?
The
The fi-
micro.
The
Michael, yes,
microfish.
microfish. Thank you.
Microfish. Oh
So
yeah.
you would always go there to do all your research for a big project, and
Right.
the Google wasn't really there. It
Was
was
the
Ask
microfish
Jeeves and
machine considered a computer that you were banned from?
Oh, wow.
anything that was technology based. I was not
What?
allowed.
Oh wow,
Wow.
that just shows
You
you.
made somebody really embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did not
Wow.
like me at all. So there was a local career school later on that year that was building a technology department and came to
Okay.
my parents and said, "Look, we want him at our school."
Oh, of
And
course.
they like, "You sign all the waivers and y'all can have him." So
Please take them.
so the I went there, went to competitions for pen test and blue team and stuff like that. Was really good. Placed a couple of national competitions, things like that.
Oh.
And um, like my school wanted me so gone. I literally, my senior year, I didn't even show up except for the last 2 weeks and busted out all the classes just to get a 70 so they could walk me across the stage.
That's hilarious. And you still went too.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Holy cow. So nothing happened. Like, I mean, back then they didn't, first of all, the laws weren't in
There was
place
no
and they didn't
precedent for
know.
anything back then.
yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really know how to handle things like this, right?
Mm-mm.
So,
So how
and
did you graduate from that to what came next?
So I still was stumbling around, you know, trying to figure out my calling, things of that nature.
mhm,
And um, then at some point I just said F it and went in the Marine Corps and
excellent.
um, learned how to grow up a little bit and stumbled. The Marine Corps didn't have what they have now, but
Right.
so I
In
worked
terms of
with,
the cyber
it was,
arm.
so worked for ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, doing things
Mhm,
that I'm probably still not allowed to talk about today. But
yeah.
worked for there and you know did a lot of great stuff, had a lot of fun doing stuff, and um,
Is there
yeah, so
anything you got out of your serving? And thank you for your service.
Yeah,
And I
thank
mean that, and I genuinely mean that. I don't mean that in a flip way. I mean, it is something that I find with a lot of people that enter cybersecurity, right? They are drawn because there is a bigger calling.
mhm.
And I find that there's a lot of people that transition from the military and really find a home in the field of cybersecurity, as they should, right? Um, is there anything you learned from your time there that has helped you in your career today?
Patience and communication.
Patience and communication. How so? Yeah, how so?
So a lot of times we are in such, and even with me being ADHD, like there's no tomorrow, I'm very much an instant gratification. And most of
Mhm.
society, even today, is that, you want that instant gratification.
Well, and the
But
hacker mindset is that
yeah,
way too,
you.
right?
Just
I mean,
exactly.
that's
leap
just
right
part of it.
You
into
know, you want to be able to pop that shell. You want to be able to,
Mhm.
get that privilege escalation,
Yep.
and these things take time, right? So
Mhm.
you got to have that patience and, developing communication skills. So that way, I didn't even learn this until about 3 years ago with communication. I'm still a little rough around the edges just because of, my bringing up and Marine Corps and all that. So, but yeah, definitely communication will definitely get you really, really farther in life than, having the F word as every second syllable in your vocabulary,
Sure.
So,
Exactly.
but yeah, that's definitely something that you need to learn as you want to advance your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good insight.
So where are you, like, how did you transition out of the military into the private sector? Like, what was the first
So I went
role or
from
two? Like, how did that go? Because I know so many struggle with that, or they
Mhm.
feel like, oh, I have these skills, but they're not
I don't
transferable
know how to
to
apply.
they're not transferable to the private sector, and they absolutely are.
Yeah.
So how did you start to recognize that, and what were some of your moves?
So, when I got out, I was a stumbling block, tumbling weed. I really didn't know where to call home, right?
Mhm.
So ended up calling Black Box a home for a while. For
Mhm.
those who don't know, they're big security and manufacturer of technology.
Mhm.
So was working for uh, the working as a knock and sock for like Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, all that stuff. Ended up I could make more money as an independent contractor than actually working for them. So that's how I kind of came on my own. Um, tried to work for different companies and stuff like that, but it just never panned out, right?
Were you
Yeah,
more on the blue side or the red side?
blue.
Okay.
Yeah, I was blue by day job and red when
Right.
I was bored at night.
Yep. I think that's the
See that
epitome
before.
of, yeah, that's the epitome of people that really like it. You know what I mean? Because the blue side has more opportunities, right? There's all the organizations that need the monitoring, the threat hunting, the managed SIM, the SOC services, all that. But
Mhm.
then the fun stuff is really in the, how do I make this lawnmower become a jet type
Yep.
of thing, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind
Famous
of
last words. Hey, y'all, watch this.
Watch this.
exactly, like, hold my beer, I'm about to do something here, and you just
Mhm.
start cracking code. Yeah, that's really cool. So how did you migrate into like forensics work? Like,
It actually felt. I actually stumbled into it by accident. So, right before COVID, it's been really weighing on me to get back into cybersecurity. We were doing an MSP for a while, and just wasn't liking it. I mean, nothing against MSPs, definitely
no,
you
it's
guys read it,
tough, it's a tough
but
job.
there's only so many printer calls you could take a day
I
before want
know.
to put your head through a wall.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly
but
right.
I always had this passion, but I didn't know if I could trust myself not to cross that line, right? So
Yeah.
anybody who follows me, I got a son that's on the heart transplant list. There's, a lot of health issues there. I got a full-fledged family just like everybody else. I value my freedom
Hmm.
and really can't take care of your family from behind, a
No,
freaking chain link wall, right?
it's
So,
exactly right. And that's so interesting that you say that. We've talked to several people that have had very similar experiences. I mean, some of them, I remember during COVID really changed things. Like
mhm,
some of them, COVID changed their ability to make money. And they were like, I need the family to help out, because otherwise I'm going to wind up doing something that's going to get me put away. And
mm.
yeah, so yeah, and I'm sure at that time when you were grappling with it, you felt alone, but in reality, you weren't, because there were a lot of people with that skill set that were struggling with that.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't the COVID. So this was like a time right before COVID.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to give you the, a
Yeah, the
timeline.
timeline. Okay.
Exactly. So we had I was wanting to get back into it. This was probably, 2018, 2019 time
Okay.
era. So I started doing bug bounty. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
let me see if I can start doing this and not cross that line.
Right.
Yeah. So
And then,
can you walk the ladies and gentlemen the ladies and gentlemen of the listeners, because sometimes we have business owners.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have people that listen to it because they like true crime. Like, we have a whole host. Our demographic is bizarre. And so explain to people, and some of you are going to totally know what it is, obviously, and you're rolling your eyes. The others are like, what's a bug bounty program? Like, can you just kind of explain it? Unless
Absolutely.
you want me to, but trust me, you don't want me to.
So bug bounty in the grandest 30,000 foot view simplification is you're allowing a team of hackers with boundaries to
Mhm.
try to penetrate on your environment, your software,
Right.
your infrastructure, things of that nature. And if they find something, then you pay them out a reward depending on the severity of the find.
Right. SaaS programs, software programs, like manufacturers, like they'll do this so that they know in a safe way how would people hack into this so we can fix it before we kind of roll it out, or as we're rolling it out, how can we fix it along the way?
Yeah, companies will do bug bounty for literally two reasons. One, it's cost effective because
Mhm.
most of the time you're only paying to be on that platform, so you have the management fees of like HackerOne, BugCrowd, or whatever.
Mhm.
I think they've changed their policy since I was on there, so don't quote me on it. But the second part of it is you are opening up yourself to literally hundreds or even thousands of people trying to enumerate, penetrate your system, and you can be able to budget. It's like, okay, we're only going to allow 10 remote code executions, 10 or 5, web shells, whatever the case is. So you
Mhm.
can kind of budget that a little bit. And it's more of a proactive, ongoing thing versus your every 6 months, every 12 months scheduled pen test. That's,
I was going to
you
say
know,
it sounds a lot more effective than a penetration test, right?
typically it is. Typically,
Yeah.
the program's got to be elusive for the hacker
Right.
to go onto it. So, I mean, the money's got to be there. It can't just be like,
Mhm.
oh, we love you. We're going to give you free swag and put your name on our site.
Yeah, that's not going to do it.
That doesn't
No,
work.
no.
Yeah. So and then walk us again like how you got into like forensics.
So, once I was doing bug bounty on the side for about a year and really could start trusting myself, we had a couple of clients or a couple of cases came over and said, hey, you're really doing all this cool stuff and everything. You ever thought about doing forensics? I'm like, no, let's check it
Mm.
out. So I started doing it was like 3 or 4 cases in, and this was right when COVID was starting to come across, and the news was like, we have our first case in California and stuff like that. That whole
Mhm.
spread of things.
Yep.
Again, I'm not going to get political on this show by any means, but that just again timeline. But we had just finished up our 4th or 5th case, and I was really starting to like it. I was like, this is what I've been longing for, how to hunt evil. And
Yes.
this is my drive. It's like, I loved it. Like, I could
Right.
sit there and look at code and look at logs all day long. I'm like, this is it. This is home.
Yeah.
And
I'm fascinated by it because it's the story behind the story. Like you can see when you examine it, kind of what their MO is, right? What their
mhm,
modus operandi is. Like you
mhm.
can tell, like they leave a digital like
Footprints.
calling card.
Yeah.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like they do. Like they all do. They all have their unique aspects, and understanding that helps you protect against it. Because if you don't, then you're not going to know. You're just kind of, shooting in the dark
Yep.
without really knowing kind of what they're doing.
Yep. So then COVID hit, and we were on these Zoom calls and got introduced to a whole bunch of people and was able to really spread out our name. And the I cavily joke about a little bit. Don't take it too far, folks. But I really say that it took a national or a global pandemic to launch the business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. It kind of did. I mean,
Yeah.
so much you saw such an escalation in attacks and such an escalation in certain types. Um, what were some of the very first kind of cyber crime gangs that you kind of gained experience with?
Definitely Locky. Definitely. There was a group that we helped take down called the Stop Ransomware Group. Um, that was fun to take down with Department of Homeland Security.
Oh, cool.
We did several contis. There's some other ones that are no longer in production
Yeah.
anymore, but yeah, I mean,
Well,
just like
and the Contis and stuff, it tends to be similar people. They just
yes,
kind of regroup and rebrand. It's like they get different jackets with different names on their back or something.
yeah, we used to make the joke that they were like literally all these threat actors were like in think of a big call center.
Yeah,
And they're
it's like
just
they're
in
all in
these
the
little
same
cubicles.
like housing edition in Eastern Europe.
They just moved cubicle pod
Yeah,
sections.
yeah,
Like what all they did is like crazy.
yeah. So, holy cow! So, how did you first get involved? Like you're like one of your first, like the coolest one in the beginning when you got involved with the one with Homeland Security. Like how, like what all happened without disclosing anything, obviously confidential, but what all happened? Like walk us through kind of what you saw.
So, I mean, to understand, most of the three-ledger agencies, the communication and the TTPs and things of that nature is pretty much one-way street. So
Right. And
we are
TTPs are like
techniques, tactics,
tactics.
and procedures
Yeah,
that the threat actor
techniques
uses.
in right. Like it's their modus operandi.
Exactly.
It's like how they're doing it, how they're taking down organizations with ransomware or whatever the malware attack could be. It's usually a whole combination of a whole bunch of things. But the media calls it a ransomware attack. But there's
Yeah.
15 different things that they did.
Oh yeah, right. That's like the earliest days of hacker, right?
Yeah.
You did some phone garbage and you were a hacker or whatever. So
Right.
anything pretty much they didn't understand. So
Yeah.
even data exfiltration now is considered ransomware. I'm like,
Yeah.
no,
Right,
it's
exactly.
extortion, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. All it is extortion. All it is ransom.
Mhm.
It is no different than taking somebody's daughter and saying, "You want her back? Give us $1 million. Drop it at the park." Right? Like
Yep.
that is what it is. It's just instead of the daughter, it is a whole bunch of gold that organization needs to survive.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to take it, where the personal level, but a lot of these business owners this is a personal attack on them, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, the most of the time, these are very small businesses under
Mhm.
500 team members
Yep.
in the
Yep.
organization, and this has been their quote unquote baby, right?
This is
And
their whole life. This is their house, their mortgage, their kids in school. This is everything. This is their retirement, everything. And they've built it up over a
their legacy is
generation,
just
right? And they've spent blood, sweat, and tears. This is their identity,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. It's really tragic. I mean, and we've had several people that we've spoken to about, what happens, like the human side of it. And people just are, it's really emotionally draining
it
when
is.
this happens.
Yeah, we had one case year and a half ago where the client, we were going through and doing the discovery, literally passed out on a Zoom call.
Oh,
And thankfully, we already had enough information that we were able to call 911 and stay on and be like, "Yeah, it's right here,"
oh,
So I
gosh.
mean, but yeah, people having complete meltdowns, panic attacks. We've seen one, like I said, one heart attack.
oh,
It's crazy. I mean, it takes a toll on you that you cannot imagine.
yeah.
I've heard the stories. There was a buddy of mine that does another podcast that he was giving me a story. He was in jury duty, and like the dude was just white as a ghost, and he was like of Asian descent. So he's supposed to have some brown tint to him. He was just like white because he was dealing with this and couldn't be in jury, and he was just like pleading with the judge, "Please let me go. I can't do jury duty. I got this other stuff." And it's like, I think he needed medical attention too. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it really is.
I'm
It
curious
really
whether
does
the
get bad.
judge let him off. Sometimes
Oh
the
yeah,
judges, yeah, good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, I think that,
there's collateral damage around things like that people don't recognize or don't understand. David, you remember that manufacturer that called us in, it had been well after the breach. It was like a week later. And we're sitting in the office talking to the CEO, and one of the production workers came in on a Friday to pick her check up, and they're like, "You didn't work all week. We were down. We were shut all production down. You're an hourly employee. You didn't work. You don't get paid." She's fell to her knees and she's like, "I'm a single mom. That was my rent check. What do you mean I don't get paid?"
Hmm.
right. And
They're like, "Yeah,
yeah,
we get a rent check." And it's just terrible to see what it
it's a
does.
good point. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. And I remember that because it was the first time we really kind of saw the second tier layer of the victims,
Mhm.
right? Like it's not even just the owners, because the owners are, to me, it's so important why they've got to do tabletop exercises. They got to prepare for these things because you don't want to be like the boom happens the day of and be like, hey, let's dust off that incident response plan. Who's supposed to do this step, right? Oh, Carl hasn't been here for 2 years. Who's supposed to do this? And, or everybody just thinks the IT guy is going to handle it all. Like, good luck with that. That's really scary.
The one thing that most people don't do in incident response plans, they don't have a yearly conversation with their insurance brokers.
Right.
And like,
really
okay, what
important.
exactly
Yeah.
is not covered?
Right.
Things that people don't, it's like, okay, ransomware payment up to X amount is covered. Okay. Are employee benefits and downtime, or if I got to pay my wages, is that covered?
Right.
Is loss of business revenue covered? Is damage to reputation covered? If you're in a ransomware attack, is the or data exfiltration, is client notifications of breaches covered? If so, what are your limits? And run that dry top. It's like, okay, call up 3 vendors. If you don't have them, call me. I'll tell you 3 of them. But it's like, okay, I have in my SQL database, I have 1 million clients that have PII.
Right.
What would be a roundabout number if we were to be popped this week? What would be that number that we would have to pay, or insurance would have to pay, to do breach notification to those people?
Yeah.
And then find out if it's covered.
What's it going to cost to print out the letters? Mail.
A lot of times you could do it either internally or externally, where there are literally services that do the call center, the notification for your credit bureaus and email and all that stuff. So it actually takes that off of you of, oh, I don't know what to do next or whatever. But, having those type of things in place, or a really good digital forensics firm that has those connections, is what you want.
Yeah, because I think the insurance industry has gone through such a tumultuous time, right? Like they were just writing for premium, and then they just started getting hit. And there's some lines that clearly get it, because I've seen the policies and they're like, this is covered up to X amount. And you can tell they've been through this before. And other ones are just like, well, it's kind of like just a business downtime. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like it's much more complex than that.
Yeah, a lot of things that people don't understand. A term that's thrown around in the insurance industry is called embetterment. So, let's just say hypothetically you have. Are we allowed to name vendors in the show? Sorry.
Sure.
Okay, so let's just say hypothetically you got a MikroTik router, not a firewall, a diagam router. And that's part of the compromisation, right? You had 3 versions behind, and they're just known for exploits. Take your Synology, QNAPs. We could do a list long, but we'll just talk with an edge device. A lot of the insurance policies do not warrant you to get a better device for protection moving forward, aka embetterment. The insurance policy will try to get you back to the day before the breach happened,
right? Which clearly is not very safe, because you were just breached necessarily, right? In a lot of scenarios, it's not the ideal. Yeah, it's not the ideal environment that you want to be in, because it happened. Now we know that it can happen even in good environments, but still, most, especially SMBs, they're not in a good, safe, built out environment.
Exactly. It's very heartening, because you always kind of wonder, did the technologist, the IT person, the MSP, whatever was supporting this organization, really put forward the recommendations, and the owner just said, nah,
they always say that. We're good.
And sometimes, you do see on some of these times, it's like, it could have been that, or it could have been like, this guy or gal clearly had no idea, what security is. And then the owner is just like, I thought we were doing the best thing. It's really hard.
It's that convoluted line, right, between managed IT or just IT support, right, and cybersecurity. So many business owners don't understand the difference, right? It's not their job to understand the difference, yet it really is, right? Nowadays, it is, because having an IT guy or girl or having a smaller MSP or whatever, right? They say they have some insurance, some security components to what they do, and they don't want to have somebody come in and inspect their work, right? And so they want to tell the owner that they're secure, they're fine, right? Don't worry about that stuff. It's not going to happen to you. You know that, right? And it's just not the case, right? Security engineers, security services, it's an entire industry. There's MSSPs versus MSPs. There's an entire, the security engineers have different trainings. They have different certifications. It's a vast chasm between the two. And most SMBs really struggle with that, especially because it's not a budget item that they've had in the past oftentimes.
Yep.
Right. And so, and salespeople oftentimes don't do a good job of articulating the risk, right? Because it's all about kind of risk on a dial, right? Like some business owners are fine, especially startups I see, right? They're fine flying, painting the plane while they're flying, right? Because it's just that mentality. And then some have those companies that have been around for 30 years and they just aren't used to paying, for these services, whether it's internal or whether it's an outsourced amount. But yet, to do that really,
I want to argue with you a little bit on that one because
Okay. Yeah.
I really am on the mindset that businesses are not going to change unless they're forced to.
No, I actually will take that argument because I guess it's not an argument because I agree with you. I think about this. I always think back. I look at security today. When you think back to the 80s, when they started to make everybody wear seatbelts, right? And they started to begin to require everybody to have insurance. People fought it left and right. They're like, I'm not doing it. There's no way I'm doing it. Like, I remember there's a video of a guy with a beer in his car. He's like, after a hard day's work, you're telling me I can't have a beer while I'm driving home? Like, you've got to be kidding. Next, you're going to tell me like this communist country is going to make me, like wear my seatbelt all the time. I remember people like rigging their cars so that the seatbelt alarm won't go off. And
you found out how to unclick it on the. Yeah, exactly.
Like, and the point is until they made it required, people didn't do it. And I think at some level, now agreeing on what that level is going to be a whole debate, but at some level and it's either going to be driven by the insurance industry or by regulation but the private sector trying to just say you really need this, it's the best practice, it can reduce your chances. Business owners like, I could get breached either way. And then you're like, well, then at least do tabletop exercises and prepare. And it's like, well, but it's still optional. And so we sit there with an optional culture.
So I do think it's going to come down to regulation as much as I would love for it to come from the insurance industry.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that they don't understand that not all switches can be MFA'd. Until they start understanding that kind of stuff, the real technical level of things. But I don't think it's going to come from the federal government side as much as they want to do it.
Yeah, they're the ones making the most noise right now.
They are, but they're making noise about literally effing nothing.
Yeah.
Let's take a step back. I've harped on this one and stood on my soapbox, and I'm happy to do it for another 3 hours. Where Biden 2 years ago made all the executive orders for the DOD and all these other federal agencies to implement MFA and all these other security protocols, and they still haven't done it. Now they're saying the SEC is supposed to do things. They're not going to do. I mean, come on. They're there. Let's just be honest with each other.
Right.
We're coming up on an election year. They're going to say whatever to make it sound good. And this time, after the election, they're not going to care.
4 years from now, we're not going to be in a different place.
The only one that I've seen,
CMMC is getting.
Oh, you want to go down that dumpster track? Okay. that actually is my point. So you had originally the CMMC that was going to be the catalyst of cybersecurity for the
Mhm.
DoD, everybody prime and subprime. They
Yep.
couldn't even keep up with their own standards. They had
I
to
know.
step back and say, "Oh, we'll just adopt 800.171."
Right. Yeah. It's frustrating.
You know, but
So,
I
so
think
is it up to the
Louisiana's came.
states then? Like,
Yeah, I
is it
think
going to
so.
be up to the states?
I was really hoping more and more states were going to do it. We did start to see some of the traction with Louisiana, where they're like, okay, we want you to identify if you're an MSP or MSSP. I think it was Louisiana. It's been a couple of years, but we haven't heard anything since then. I was like, great, we're starting to get some local representation
Yeah.
about some stuff. We have seen.
I know Indiana, where I sit, they just passed a new privacy law, kind of along the lines with, I think, Louisiana, California, and somebody else. And it's related. It's not exactly what we're talking about, but it does ratchet up the dial a little bit, which is good.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many other states have it, but I do know
There are
Florida.
only a few.
I know Florida, what was it, 2 weeks or maybe a month ago, recently released a grant for business owners to start purchasing cybersecurity products and services from
Yeah.
leftover funds from COVID.
So there you go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? That's pretty cool. But I agree. I mean, it needs to be mandated, because if it needs to be mandated, then every organization will just say, well, it's just part of doing business. I mean, they know if they don't have CGL insurance, like commercial general liability insurance, and somebody, is driving a truck, or somebody is hurt on a scaffold or something like that they're going to get sued and there's going to be liability. So part of the cost of doing business is to engage in that. It's just one of those things that if it becomes kind of a mechanism, but clearly right now it's just the Wild West.
Welcome to the dark web.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And it's bizarre how fast it goes too. So, walk us through. So who engages, like, walk us through Barricade a little bit, like some of the things that you guys are seeing. So do you get involved with like breach counsel, forensics teams? Do they reach out to you guys?
So we definitely cater to the smaller of the SMB. We're a small digital forensics and incident response. So we're kind of like Kroll to some degree, kind of like Mandy. Granted, we don't have the uber talent that those folks have. But yeah, we do, containment, threat actor negotiations, for digital forensics and restoration services for our suite of things that happen. But yeah, a lot of times
you're like Service Master when a flood comes in.
It's like, right? It never happened.
Like, it's as if it never happened. It's as if it never
there
happened.
We go, my new LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. There you go. That's phenomenal. Oh my God. It's like, we will shampoo your rugs like it never happened, man. That is incredible.
So yeah, I mean, we do get called in sometimes by breach counsel. We do have some relationships with those. We do have relationship with MSPs that are on just pure restoration. They don't do the forensics or negotiations or containment, things of that nature. So we do play in several different roles. We're hoping by the end of the year, there's a very large OEM manufacturer that has an internal DFIR team, and we may be that threat actor negotiation firm for them.
That'd be phenomenal.
That will be cool. That'd
be really
see
cool
that one
for
happen.
you. Yeah. So share with us, because our audience loves stories. So share with us a story like you've actually been involved, and you can change the names to protect the innocent, but like you've had to negotiate with cyber criminal gangs.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay. So that's not something people see every day. Like that is like, negotiating with somebody that's holding something for ransom. Like, what can you share with us about that? Because there's like a billion questions that come to my mind.
I mean, is it like a back and forth? How does that even start?
So yeah, a lot of times
you guys jump on a Zoom meeting together. Like, how do you do it?
Yeah, let me bring up my Russian translator real quick.
You have your phone with like Russian translation. Like, here's what I'm saying, comrade. Is that what you're doing?
No. But some of them are on a dark web Tor site. Some of them are pure email. It really depends on the threat actor that we're talking about. once you get to
I
a
was just
higher level,
assuming you went to their dark web site, like their leak site or whatever. Like everybody's got a
typically
yeah,
the larger groups like your Lockbit and what was
right.
Conti and Hive and
Yeah,
all these other ones here, right? A lot of them do have onion sites that are on
yep,
the dark web that we will go to and do the negotiations from.
right. And on those sites, it doesn't say that they are like cybercrime gang, the best criminals ever. It's always
Dude,
like
oh
we
my
are
God.
penetration testers.
Testing, yes. Yeah,
Yes.
we've audited your system and you failed. Well, no sorry.
Yeah.
I
You
almost went
didn't.
down a real bad. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one that
You
really
didn't
drives
audit
me nuts
anything.
is like, hello, friend, hello, client,
Right.
not your friend.
Yeah.
So, but
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
so yeah, we in short, we do, depending on the client's risk tolerance. So there are two different mindsets, especially when we're
Right.
dealing with an insurance matter, a case that's covered by an insurance agency. Um, they will always want us to do threat actor negotiations because they want to see, can they prove what they've taken? Who are
Right.
they really? Can we get a proof of concept that they can decrypt a couple sample files, things
Yeah.
of that
Is
nature?
that called like a proof of life or something like that?
Proof of
Basically.
concept.
Yeah. Proof of concept. Yeah.
hmm And trying to get as much TTPs out of them so that way, breach counsel can notify the FBI if
Mhm.
anything is fun fact. Sorry, like I told you in the beginning, I'm riddled with
No, it's okay.
ADHD.
This is good.
We were like 30 minutes in. We hadn't even talked about the topic. But
He's right.
did you know that the FBI does not do any takedowns of internet sites or anything like that? It's DHS.
Yes.
Really?
So we actually,
Yeah. It's
for those who
the
crazy.
Department of Homeland Security, right?
Yep. So they're the ones. So if we see like an active, and we've seen this before, and that's kind of what I was talking about a little bit ago, that if we see an active payload on a site, an Amazon site or whatever, we can notify DHS, hey, Lockbit's got an active payload. If we see it going here, here, and here, and then miraculously, 16 minutes later, it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But yeah, back to the point on topic, they want, the insurance carriers, they want to know, what kind of Bitcoin or Monero coin or whatever current cryptocurrency that they're going to use. How much do they want? Are you able to do negotiations to get them down to whatever you want them to be at? All those type of things. So there's a lot of stuff that goes through that. And
do they give you parameters? Like, how involved is the cybersecurity insurance firm in the negotiation?
most of the time, they are not very much. Everything gets run through breach counsel for the most part, for at least the covered entity cases.
What's that?
Then,
Can you explain what a covered entity means? Oh, you mean
so
covered under the insurance policy?
there's policy, yeah.
Okay.
So, if a client, David has, David Sprockets over here, and he got hit, and if he has actual cybersecurity insurance that covers for things, then, a lot of times they'll have for breach counsel, DFIR, remediation, containment, all that stuff. Like we were talking about a little bit ago. But most of the time they don't get a whole lot involved. They just want debriefs from breach counsel,
Right.
Status of things, letting them know a notification of original ransom demand, final ransom payment, cryptocurrencies. Did we do an OFAC check and providing that type of report?
Yeah, that was just where I was going to go, because I want to, like, people don't understand this at all, like what OFAC is. Can you, like, high level and then walk us down?
Okay, so OFAC is the Office of Foreign Asset Control.
Yeah, something like
Currency?
yeah, I think that's
Something
right.
like
Something like that.
But it's pretty much essentially the IRS's version of the FBI Most Wanted.
Right.
So the IRS puts out a list that gets updated routinely, ish. That says, you can't deal with these certain organizations, you can't deal with these certain countries, you can't deal with, these sort of addresses, people, and they've even listed cryptocurrency wallets of all sorts of types and things of that
They
nature.
go
So,
down to that granular level. Wow. That's
so
interesting.
you have to pull a latest report and provide or pull the latest OFAC list down run it through, make sure that all the parameters that that we're dealing with do not fall underneath those guidances.
Right.
And
Meaning if a hacker breaches you from, let's just say, North Korea, right? You can't pay North Korea the ransom. You're not allowed to. It would be considered treason or violation of this act.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't stop the client from doing it,
Right.
but we can't pay on their behalf.
Right.
But we have to advise them. Look, you're about to break a law.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
you do what you want to do. Fun fact: the FBI is probably not going to come down knocking down your door because of it.
Right.
Yeah.
You may have some very stern questions with some other 3-letter agencies you may not want to have a conversation with.
I mean, and there are
the
laws like
KGB, I mean IRS.
Yeah, there's like the speeding ticket violations, and then there's like that you want to really be careful doing.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Because getting hauled off into
it's never good. I promise.
It's not good.
It's so serious.
Yeah, it's not good. That's all I'm going to say is it's just not good. So, yeah. So what's the most outrageous demand some of these cyber crime gangs have?
We had one that wanted $3 million
from a small business. From a small business.
Yeah, because they've got that kind of capital just laying around.
Yeah, it's just sitting around. That's why they didn't have the initial, like, just standard security services, because they were sitting on
a router for a firewall.
Yeah, they were sitting there with $3 million in cash in the bank.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I mean, it took us about 3 weeks of negotiations back and forth, and they got pretty intense. And we finally got them down to, I think, $250,000.
Oh, that's a good negotiation.
Yeah.
Down from $3 million.
I mean, fortunately, so a lot of factors come into play. Is like, one, how much time do we have for negotiations?
Right.
The longer the time we have, the more time that I can play games with them.
Right.
I can stall them, like make them go on hold for a couple of days. There's a lot of tactics that we can play, and be able to help drive that thing down. But if we're on a short time frame, a week and a half, then I got to try to get things escalated to a best possible price.
Right.
It also depends on what the customer is willing to pay, whether, again, if they're a covered entity under insurance, or if they're uninsured. Having that discussion at what time during this incident does it make sense to make that type of payment, right? We have clients that say, under no circumstances ever are we going to make a ransomware payment, until they realize that their data hasn't been backed up in 2 years.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, you also get involved in restoration, right? So, what percentage, if you can, of the time for SMBs that you get engaged with, are they able to restore from backup?
Very few.
Yeah, and I think they're really surprised to hear that, because I think everybody thinks, I got backups. It's on these tapes that Bob takes home with him, or I've got backups. It's on some NAS over there.
That's not being pushed off to the third party cloud.
Yeah. Or it's connected to something that they're going to get in and mess with before they launch something anyway, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, so even the ransomware folks are getting a little bit more clever. Their dwell time is definitely increasing.
Oh yeah.
It used to be a dwell time of 2 weeks. They would get in, they would OSINT your network, they would pivot, they would get their foothold on everything, dropping Splashtop, TeamViewer, any desk, whatever they want the threat actor's typical TTP is, and they would kind of dwell and see, right? And then,
and when you mention OSINT, you mean open source intelligence, meaning they're spying, they're gathering data, like all these different data points that all make sense when you get it all together.
Yeah, they're just like your IT person would build out a network map. Your threat actor is building out literally a network map. Here's your servers, here's your printers, here's your workstations, and I just found an AWS container.
Right.
I just found your remote users. They're building out their map, and they're doing what's called data exfiltration, where they're like, okay, these are your 3 file servers. Here's your Exchange server. Here's your SQL, whatever the case is, and they're exporting that data.
Right.
And the reason they are
organizations, smaller organizations, won't see that happening
No.
because they're in there undetected. Unless they knocked something offline, which they rarely do, you're not going to see that happening. And most organizations don't have the level of advanced security to detect that stuff.
Yeah, it's really crazy. You would think, even the basic stuff
Like managed SIM or
logging.
something like that, like log analysis.
I mean, just, a lot of them have an RMM tool, even though I want to scream about RMM tools, and maybe we'll talk about that on a different topic or a different show. But, not logging, number of failed login attempts under a certain amount of time, and new software and new services being installed. Those 3 right there, ladies and gentlemen, would help detect some of those early threat actor activities.
Right. Yep.
Absolutely.
So you say now they're in there longer. They taking on different tactics to do that and different techniques. What are they doing that they're spending?
So they're doing longer. Sorry about that, Mark. I didn't mean to step on you, but they're staying in there longer to, like David said, they don't want to trip off any EDRs, and they're doing data exfiltration. Where
Which
they
is a
would
fancy
normally
word for stealing.
they take your data and offload it to a third party server across the internet. There have been a lot of advances in firewall reporting, true firewall reporting, where if you're utilizing your bandwidth for too long, then it starts alerting you. It'll send you an email and things like that. High consumption rate of the last 6 hours. So they started throttling that back. So if you have more data, they'll spread out their data exfiltration over several weeks or even to a month to make sure they don't trip those type of alarms.
Right.
Okay.
It is just like, it's like breaking into a museum with and just not, you just don't want to you want to step over that laser arm.
That sensor.
Right?
And
yeah, that sensors.
Wow.
That is unbelievable. So what basic fundamental, here's the problem I have with the security industry. There's a lot, but one of the ones I have is this is what we were talking about. There's no rule. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's no rule. Like you drive to the grocery store. There's a speed limit sign. If you go over that, you could get a ticket. Cop pulls you over. You're like, yeah, I was doing 15 or 30. Okay. You saw the rule. You violated it. That happened. They don't know. SMB, small, mid-sized businesses in the United States, don't know what they're supposed to do. And so sometimes they're told by vendors what they're supposed to do, or they're told by their IT guy that they're fine and they don't need to do anything, right? But from your experience, what are some of the fundamentals that should be done?
The one question I always love asking, and I say this all the time, is what is it about your network or your environment that you don't understand?
Oh, that's a great question, Eric.
That's really good.
Yeah, because most business owners would be like, all of it. Like, I don't understand a lot of it. Or I don't understand why we have to have a servers here and then also somewhere else. Or there's an aspect that they won't understand.
Yep, I always lead with that question, especially if we're on a discovery call that's not DFIR. We're coming in, so we have a side that's an IR retainer, and that's one of the first questions that we ask. What is it about your environment you don't know or understand?
Yeah.
And then
how about the number of devices, like an actual asset discovery? So many organizations
they don't have it.
Don't know, and it sounds moronic when I say it, but they don't know what they have. If you think about it, over the last 15, 25 years, people have been buying stuff, taking it away. People are coming in with their own devices. They're like connecting things left and right. People are buying like smart refrigerators, throwing it on the kitchenette area. Like there's so many different, there's cameras here. There's all this stuff. And most don't have a good sense of what they actually have. So then how do you protect what you don't know?
The bigger question especially when it comes to asset inventory. I mean, you can put a tool in your network and find
scan.
out what
Right.
but where exactly is your data?
Well, yeah. In
And
relation to those
a great
devices.
a great question, or a great analogy that one of my clients a couple years gave me that I love using because I told him I was going to steal it until the end of
That's
eternity.
great.
Is not all data is considered the same.
Absolutely.
And we'll give you an example. I show up to your house, you have a house fire. You're like, help, my house is on fire. I'm like, okay, I run in, like, let's just say at your front door is your dining room,
Mhm.
right? I'm coming in, I'm grabbing your table, I'm grabbing your chairs, I'm grabbing those pictures off, but your house burned down. And you're like, what the F? My wife and kids or dog or
Right.
whatever was in that house.
Yeah.
Granted, it's all data,
Right.
but what is more critical?
Yeah.
What,
The
just
dining
because
room
you have a
table or
deal,
the family, right? Like,
exactly.
yeah.
So when you're going through your tabletop exercises,
Yeah.
what is mission one to get your business back up and running, even limping?
Right.
Is it a production server? Is it the Active Directory? Is it an SQL server for that line of business?
Well, where's your
Whatever it
intellectual
is.
property? Like, where's
Mhm,
the actual gold? Like, what makes you create your USP, your unique
mhm.
selling position? Like, what is
Process.
it? Like, where is that? That especially with a lot of SMBs, like that sits somewhere. Like the CAD designs that makes our program unique and unlike anything else. Those things are sometimes located in a specific area or a couple different areas. And
Mhm.
a lot of times IT doesn't know that necessarily, right? Like it's not communicated.
Exactly. So, when they're going through an incident, it doesn't have to be ransomware. It could just be a complete server failure,
Yeah.
right? And they're just trying, it's like, okay, you have a backup device, a NAS, a data or whatever, and you're restoring your data, but you're pushing it all over
Right.
to a replacement hardware device and you're running a hypervisor. Sorry, I know I'm getting way technical here. But let's just say you had 5 servers on one server and you're trying to restore all 5 of those servers at one time. Well, you have a bottleneck, you have a
Right.
bandwidth throughput issue. By prioritizing what server is more important, then you can prioritize your restoration, and then you can be able to say, boss,
Yeah.
this is how much time it's going to take to get
The most
this
important part.
th-
And then
this
the
part, then
other
this part, then
parts
this
will be
part, then this.
over the next few weeks.
And then you can have a more intelligent discussion about disaster
It makes
recovery.
for better
You know,
tabletop exercise too.
it makes more budgeting.
Yeah.
Mr. Business Owner, and this goes really into the quantified risk
Right.
assessments. That can you stomach a 6-hour downtime while we restore these 3 servers and then your line of business that requires those 3 servers? Those type of things. So, you know, what does that cost look like, and do we need to invest in other technology to be able to help that restoration come up faster?
Absolutely. Awesome, man. Well, I got to tell you, we would love to have you on again because I would love to take a deeper dive into.
I've got a list of questions over here, and I didn't even get to the first one.
I know.
Dude, all I gotta do is send me a calendar invite. I'll show up anytime you
Yeah.
guys
Dude, I
are ready.
love just hanging out and talking geek speak, man. This is awesome.
It's so interesting, and there's just so many things. I mean, you've got just incredible experience. The things that you see, like we have to bridge that divide between the things you see after stuff hits the fan, right?
Mhm.
Into the preparation, and so that business owners, especially SMBs, can understand it so that they can plan better, because this insight is just got to get out there. It's absolutely remarkable, man.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the one thing to leave people with is there is a reason why the U.S. is a global target.
yeah,
It's because we have the global GDP.
right.
Protect your house, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah. And I think that's a really good thing to leave off at, because everything that we have is really, really valuable, especially in the US SMB space. And we don't have the GDPRs and the systems and the regulations. So right now it's the Wild West, and that's what everybody's everybody's fighting. But what I loved that you said in the beginning is you just really, when you first discovered forensics, Eric, and that was, you just love it. You're fighting evil.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
So everybody,
Well,
Eric
we'll have
Taylor,
you back on. Yeah.
absolutely. We'll have you back on. We'll have connect with Eric on LinkedIn and check out Barricade Cyber, phenomenal company. We'll have links to all this in the show notes as well. Thanks so much, man. We will talk again soon.
It's been an awesome pleasure.
Thanks,
Cool.
Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining. Well, that wraps this up. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you got value out of digging deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Please don't forget to help keep this going by subscribing free to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, and download and enjoy all of our past episodes on Apple and Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for joining us.